What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the after credit scene. We are talking forecast and prediction for episode 4 of Agatha All Along. Before we get started, please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so when we drop new content, you'll be the first one to know about it. Then share this thing all across the multiverse. There's quite a bit to talk about. I think we're getting into the meat of the series here. We got a good idea last episode about kind of how some things are going to go, and some of my predictions are going to be a little bit scattered this time because the promotional videos are kind of showing us some of the same things I think we've seen before. I'm going to make some predictions about things we might see in this episode, but since there are still 4 more episodes after this one, given 5, 6, 7, 8, there's some things that could just kind of be scattered together and lumped together. Not unlikely that we get a backstory episode somewhere in the middle, that something happens and we stretch out an episode into a longer backstory piece. But you know, if there's 5 characters, 5 challenges, then you know, episode 3 got us through the first challenge, episode 4, 5, 6, 7, and then we still got 8 and 9 to wrap everything up. I think somewhere in the middle here we get a challenge that either we stretch out over 2 episodes, something goes wrong, because they made it through the first challenge pretty well unscathed, except for the fact that Miss Hart died. I would still consider that a minimal setback story-wise in terms of the things that need to happen on the road, given some things that have already happened. But let's get right into some of this and talk about what we can expect, and I'm curious what you guys think about it as well. So first off, I think we need to pay more attention to Agatha's behavior. 70% certain on this. The 70% certainty is really more, 50 of that is probably just she's the main character. So things that are written, things that she said are very important. However, I think the way that certain things are being acted, I just get the impression that Kathryn Hahn is making some specific acting choices over certain lines because they're either foreshadowing or because it's not just because Agatha's a weird and kooky character. There are some lines in some of these promos that feel like they're spliced together, that something else is being said here. They seem a little ridiculous and frankly a little bit cheesy, especially given how on the nose and realistic they're trying to make a lot of these things seem. It just seems a little kitschy, a little manufactured is probably a better way to put it. So either that's intentional. The alternative there is that the writing is awful, and I don't really see that because a lot of what's being done seems very intentional and on purpose, and the little dropped hints and the Easter eggs and things like that. So I really feel like we need to pay close attention, not just to what she says, but how she says it, what she does. You know, in particular, you know, when she walks off and she makes a little motion or a little side eye glance or something like that. I think some of these moments that are supposed to just be filler are not actually filler. It's why did the director choose to focus on the character at that moment and watch what she did? Was that a particular reason for that? And is there something that we're trying to pick up on that maybe we won't pick up on until the end of the series? I think we might get some stuff there, and I think it's probably pretty important because she's been manipulative the whole time, and I don't see her nature changing right off the bat. I think it's something that happens over the course of the series, happens near the end when she really gets in trouble. To that end, I think there's a mystery here to be solved, especially with the flashbacks we got of the hallucinations in episode 3. I'm only about 15% certain on this because it could just be played off for horror effect and for scary effect, and you're getting little pieces of backstory, but they have thrown this in here too many times. Why are all of these characters either bound or outcast? It's not just because Agatha tends to find these people, but why was Jessica bound? Why was she treated the way she was? Why are these other witches scared? Why, you know, what's the deal with Lorna Wu? And there's a lot of things there that these people don't just come in with baggage. There is something going on here that is going to link back either to Agatha's character or the reason that the diviner thought that these are the characters she needed with her. I definitely think that all of these characters belong together, that there's some kind of like the road is testing the coven, not just the witch. and that there's going to be some kind of self-sacrifice thing or some kind of we need to be together and we're unified type thing, more so than just, oh, we found this group of witches and they're going to help us and we put together this dream team to get down the road. But I think this idea of being bound and why they're bound and all those things is really important. One more reason I think that, and it's really where my 15% comes from, in the credits, you get all these different little pieces and these Easter eggs, and you get these different images of different witches. Now, some of it is just Disney pulling from their catalog because they can. Lisa Simpson dressed like a witch. Disney's pulling from their Fox catalog now because they can. But I think the choice to use the characters from the movie The Craft, especially since it's such an old movie now comparatively, it's 30 years old, that using the characters, specifically the character that has been bound in that movie, and it's one of the lines in that movie that's said over and over so many times that it gets cheesy and redundant. They bind this character because she is a danger to herself and a danger to others. The fact that they've brought that imagery into it, and then they've kind of hinted at the fact that these witches are bound, outcast, something's wrong, they've lost their powers. I think that's important. I don't really know why yet, but I think it's going to play heavily into backstories and into whatever transpires at the end of the show, more so than maybe some things that are just hinted at in the middle episodes while they're traversing the road. Having said that, I think we got a pretty good layout for what's going to happen here. In a lot of ways, it's a road trip, quite literally. They're walking the road, but they come to a new house, a new challenge. Some of the imagery, there's a house that we have not come upon yet where they're all going to be dressed in 70s clothes, and I think that's going to have to do with the Lorna Wu character, and we're going to get a remix, a rock version of that Witch's Road song. Some of that stuff may happen in this episode, maybe an episode or two after it. There's another castle. I think that has to do with the divinator, with Patti LuPone's character. There's some shots where at first I thought it was images that some fan-made trailer just pulled from a Wicked trailer or a Wicked movie. But I think it's actually Kathryn Hahn dressed as the Wicked Witch of the West, which would make her the Wicked Witch of Westview. Not so much the Scarlet Witch, who would be the Wicked Witch of Westview also. But in this scenario, she is the Wicked Witch. But Patti LuPone's character is dressed like Glinda the Good Witch, and she's wearing a crown. There's been some images of her with her tarot cards, and one of them is the Tower. And one of the interpretations of that card, if you do a quick Google search, is about power and control and pulling power from other things. Specifically, if that crown is part of whatever the reading is at the moment. I don't really understand a lot about that, but a quick Google search will give you some of those things, and it certainly seems like it would fit some of the narratives that we've seen so far. So that may be the next episode. You may get this, Wizard of Oz type thing, which would lead me to ask a question more so than who's the Wicked Witch, but we'll get to some of those questions that brings up here in just a second. But we got our general idea here. We find a new house, we find a new place along the road that magically appears. That's where the challenge takes place, and when they overcome that challenge, they are then dumped back out onto the road to face whatever challenges lie there. I think as they're dumped out on the road, we saw at the end of last episode that Mrs. Hart died. I think she is quite literally gone, unless the road is just something that happens in your mind, and it's not something that actually takes place physically, in which case all of this is happening in their heads. It's not actually happening. They're singing this song to open the Witch's Road, but at some point they just poof and they're back in the basement again, and it was all in their heads. Or maybe they're still under some kind of hex with Westview. There's a whole lot of Inception type things, illusions within illusions that could be going on. I think they do something to pay respects to Miss Hart's character, or they stop for a second. What do we do? How do we move on? She was our Green Witch, blah, 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 blah. Something happens that causes Rio to appear. Miss Hart disappears, Rio appears. There's a shot of her coming up out of the ground, and it looks like it's happening right where they ended episode 3. So we'll see. I think Rio's going to show up. She needs to show up. She was part of the diviners list of witches. And she needs to be there if for no other reason than one, she pops up in some other trailers and some other images that take place on the road. And two, there's some things that she has to deal with Agatha. And three, it's Aubrey Plaza, and you don't pull her into the show just to show her for one episode or two and then throw her away. So Rio's coming. I think that's going to happen in this episode. I'm 100% certain of that. I'm also 100% certain, just because of the character and because of what's going on and all the clues they've been giving. I think we're going to find out what happened, who this teen is and what's going on, but I think the clues are going to continue to confound. I don't think that there's going to be some breakthrough for at least 3 or 4 more episodes. I think finding out who he is early on is not really that important. I think it's a big point that the characters want to know, but it's not as important to the characters as it is to the viewers. And so I think it's going to keep the viewers around to keep throwing out little tidbits, and the rest of the characters have other bigger fish to fry, and so he's with them, but it's kind of like, oh yeah, who are you? Whatever, we need to solve this other thing. And so I think it's stretching that plot device out so that it keeps the viewers around and it keeps kind of confounding them, I think, is the whole point at this moment. So I think the clues are going to only get a little weirder. It's going to be like a case of intentionally trying to confuse the viewers, where everybody spends a week saying, oh, Mephisto, like they probably did this week. A whole lot of different things like that are going to be happening, and I don't think we're going to get any answers for at least 3 or 4 more episodes. Historically, in some of these shows, episode 4 and 5 tend to be big turning points. They might throw that in episode 5, but I doubt it. I think we get this one stretched out. I think the big turning point in this one is episode 6 or 7. That something happens. We get some information here that really pushes us towards, gets everybody talking, pushes us towards the last 3 episodes. So don't expect a lot of answers there. I think the clues are only going to get more confounding. Having said that, my question about what's going on with these challenges, Rio showing up, what's the next step? In some of these shots, I think if we get the Glinda the Good Witch, Wicked Witch of the West, the Wizard of Oz type challenge this week, even if we get it next week too, my question is, who is the great and powerful Oz? If each of the characters in this story are dressed like characters from the Wizard of Oz, you're going to get a Scarecrow character, which I can only imagine would be the Scratch character, because he has been the most fearful. You're going to get one that has no heart. You're getting a Tin Man character. You're going to get a Cowardly Lion character. You're going to get the Wicked Witch of the West character, which is going to be Catherine Hahn. Glinda the Good Witch, which is Patti LuPone's character. Who are these different characters, and why? And ultimately, who is the great and powerful Oz? Who's the person behind the scenes, pulling all the strings? I think that's a really important point, and I think it's even more fuel for the Mephisto fire. I would not be surprised if they actually utilize Mephisto in this show, because they don't have to really push it in overseas markets like they would a movie, so they can get away with using that character in this show, because they're not as worried about the overseas market like they would be if they had to try to figure out a way to put it in a movie and risk it not being used in an overseas market like China, who has a lot of restrictions on that. So 80% certain here. I think the metaphor is going to happen, but whether or not they give you that and whether or not it matters, who's the one pulling the strings, and does that matter at all? I think as we move forward, I still think Easter egg heavy. They're important clues to what's going on in the show. What the wallpaper looks like, what a rug looks like, what color certain things are in the background, who does something first and who doesn't. I think you pay attention to the words, to the colors of things, to the objects in the background, to the images on the floor, to the things that are carved into the walls. All the different images in every single scene could have meaning for the road, for each character, for the story itself, or just for the MCU, and it could be a whole lot of fun. I think a lot of the scenes that I have seen from promos that we haven't seen in the show yet look like the Salem 7 is going to find a way onto the Witch's Road along with these people, and the race against time, the race to find the next step and get into the different houses where the puzzles are, is going to only ramp up. Whether they have to fight them on the road or whether they have to figure out a way to run away from them, and that's what pushes them to get to the next challenge, in which case are the Salem Seven the ones, causing these things, trying to move them forward. Who knows? But I think all of those things are going to come together, quite possibly with this coven, this new coven, taking on the Salem Seven at the end of this show. It could be a possibility, but they're going to have to deal with it. And I don't think it's going to be dealt with in a, oh, well, we just did this one thing and oh, it's all better. I think there's a big confrontation coming on multiple fronts. Agatha's past, all of these characters' pasts, who the teen is, what's going on right now with Agatha and this group, them becoming a coven, which I think is going to happen, and then the Salem Seven. There's a whole lot of things going on here. And why this episode, why this show even matters in the greater MCU. The Marvel is very careful about what shows they pick, why they pick them, and it's not just so that they can say, well, we've got content. They like characters, they think it will sell well, but they also want to incorporate it into the larger MCU, and it's not just, well, it takes place after WandaVision. There's going to be something here that ties it to other things and makes this universe, this part of the world, a lot more richer. And it's going to have some implications somewhere. Maybe not big movie implications, but it's not just, well, that was a fun show to watch. I think they're doing that with some of the spotlight shows, particularly Echo. It has ties to the greater MCU, but if you pulled that show out, even though other characters pop up in it, you don't have to mention it in other shows. And if those characters do show up in movies, they're an easy enough introduction into the movie itself that you don't have to pull them, you don't have to remind people of what happened in a TV show. It can be an origin story that's like, oh, I want to know how that happened, or I don't need to know how that happened. But I think here, since it's not a spotlight and it is part of the Marvel TV portion on Disney Plus, how does this fit in? And how do these characters in this part of the universe interact and affect the rest of the universe? It's going to be very interesting to find out. Maybe it's some of these elements here, who's the great and powerful Oz. Maybe it's just the Easter egg clues. Maybe it is who the teen is and how his story is going to move forward in regards to Agatha and others, and with the Scarlet Witch. I'm really curious to see what you guys think. Please join the conversation in the comments below. Like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. And check out some of our other content over here. We got a whole lot of things you can sink your teeth into. And as always, when the next one drops, we'll catch you right back here. Later, guys.